Hey everybody, I'm Eboni K. Williams along with Kat Timpf and Eric Bolling, and we are the Fox News Specialists. We are now awaiting two big House votes to help combat illegal immigration, which is at the center of President Trump's immigration agenda. Kate's Law and the No Sanctuary for Criminals Act that would cut federal funds to sanctuary cities. Now, a short time ago, the Department of Justice hosted a panel featuring the family members of victims of crimes committed by undocumented immigrants. They gave powerful remarks about the importance of both of these bills.
Against immigrants. We are against illegal aliens and illegal alien criminals who are amongst us. We are Americans fighting for you. We're Americans fighting that none of this happens to any other American, and it shouldn't. And I think every one of us needs to really do a check on your conscience if your fellow American doesn't mean as much to you as an illegal criminal does.
The legislation that they're trying to pass right now is not about a political party, but it's about the safety of America. And it may be your own sister, your own mother, your child, that the vote that you vote today could harm them if it's not voted right. We've got to forget about partisan politics and vote what's best for every American citizen into law.
Okay, Eric, we talked yesterday about the personalizing of this particular legislation, and it doesn't get any more personal than that.
Four big immigration bills being voted on probably during our hour. Hopefully we'll get one of them. The Sanctuary City bill law, the first one maybe in the next few minutes or so, and then Kate's Law, which you referenced right there. A couple other big things happening today. North Korea's bank sanctions came out this afternoon, and also the travel ban goes into effect. It's a huge news day.
Huge news day, Kat, and many things on the
Good thing the president didn't do anything to distract from that.
What are you?
Was he busy?
I think we'll get into that a little later in the show. So with that, we'll meet today's specialist. So he was a national campaign manager for President Reagan's re-election back in 1984. He served in the administrations of four United States presidents: Nixon, Ford, Reagan, and Bush 41. He was also elected into the Political Consultants Hall of Fame. So obviously he specializes in everything politics. The legend Ed Rollins is here.
Thank you.
And he's a film producer, a partner at the digital media company Freethink, and he co-hosts a syndicated podcast called The Fifth Column on SiriusXM Radio, but he specializes in steel manning. Kmele Foster is here. Thank you both for being with us today. Such a big news day. Ed, go ahead.
Well, thank you. It's such a privilege to be here with such young, brilliant people, and you too, Eric.
You're talking about, you're talking about me. I was just going to give you a compliment, Ed Rollins. If you don't know Ed Rollins, very quick, I'm sorry, Ed. Ed Rollins was at the head of the campaign that won 49 states, the Reagan campaign, that you took down Walter Mondale, who won, how many? One state.
By 3,100 votes. I beat Beckel.
Yeah, you did. And you did that just how we rehearsed.
But Ronald Reagan basically said to me, what happened to Minnesota?
Came up a little short there.
I said, well, Mr. President, we have to put nuclear waste somewhere. There are a lot of lakes in Minnesota, which obviously we didn't do. But
so, you know, when the president puts those family members out there, and we can see that it goes beyond just a red-blue issue, like so much of our hyper-partisan things are today. How do you feel like that?
When you read this bill, it's a very simple bill. If you sneak back into the country 3 times and you've committed a felony, you can possibly go to jail for 10 years. I mean, this just ought to be a slam dunk vote that every member of Congress should vote for. It will pass the House. The Senate, we're a few votes short. But I would say to every senator who's not going to vote for this on the Democratic side, this is going to become a big issue.
Well, so, Ed, why would it fall short in the Senate? Which Republicans aren't going to vote for it?
The Senate, I think we're going to get all this. It's not a 50-vote deal. It's a 60. We need 60.
Oh, you need a 60.
And there's about 55. I think we picked up 2 or 3 since the last time. And there's we're about 5 votes short.
So he talks about the last time, Kmele. Obviously, this is not the first time Kate's Law is being attempted to get passed. It was one other time. And exactly as Ed said, there were three Democrats, I think, that got on board, but still fell short. When you hear these mothers and these family members talk about this so compassionately, if you had a message to the Democrats that were hesitant around it, for whatever reasons, constituents, the partisan, the resistance movement, what would you tell them to get them on board with this?
Well, I don't know what I would tell them to get on board with this. I'm not particularly excited about this piece of legislation. And part of the concern that I have about it is, I mean, clearly we all are concerned about violent crime. We want to see it reduced. I'm not certain that this legislation actually does a great deal where that's concerned. I think the president has had a lot of concerns and has talked a great deal about illegal immigration in particular. But I'm not certain that that is fueling violent crime. I think there are plenty of issues that we could talk about if that's our concern. This isn't really one of them.
You don't think that would be a deterrent that you could face 5 or
I agree.
or longer?
I agree with you, Kmele, specifically because if we're talking about 5 years, and again, this is not me or Kmele coming out on the side
Absolutely
of people
not.
committing violent crimes
No.
and saying that they should be allowed to do so or that that's good. But if we're talking about someone whose family's still here, they're probably not going to let 5 years stop them from coming back.
This would not have saved Kate's life, which is
Right.
important.
Wait,
we should at least keep that in mind.
How do you know that? You guys are both
Well, this is a guy.
speculating.
Well, of
That's
course
why
I
we
am,
have
sure.
punishment in everywhere, not just this country.
But this is someone
We have
who'd already
punishment
gone to jail
deter
multiple
crime.
times. Every single time he tried to sneak in, he had been caught by someone, and
Yeah,
he
but
was
this
sent
time,
to
under the
someplace
new law,
afterwards by the
you
government.
get caught again. This guy, Kate's killer, was caught 5 separate times.
I was going to say,
at some point, he would have been in jail for 5 years.
But we should.
Let me say this.
Please.
Factual, because I've dealt with ICE and all of this stuff from a criminal defense standpoint. So what would have happened under the hypothetical? I don't know that it's true, Kmele, that Kate's killer would not have been.
Know.
Right,
Sure.
because he 5 times, he left, came back. So let's say the second time, if this law would have been done, because the law proposes if you get convicted of a felony, even just one felony, and you come back over here, you're looking at up to 10 years.
Sure.
And it's 3 misdemeanors that then you would face the 10 years.
He had
so
7
his
felonies.
That's what I'm
Let's
saying. So
just
maybe
say-
the second or third time,
if
he
you
would
really
do
do-
it
I
for 10
don't have a
years.
problem with that at all. I don't think anybody would have a problem with that. I'm just saying I'm not sure how much of or what percentage of overall crime that this really represents.
This isn't about overall crime. This is about criminals who come across the border and commit crimes a second or third time. And obviously, they have to be treated in a way that's different.
Aggressive.
And, and the sanctuary cities, the first city in California, I ran a campaign against Dianne Feinstein, and Dianne Feinstein, when she was mayor of, I read Teddy Roosevelt's race too, so if you really want to go back, but Dianne Feinstein, as the mayor, decided she wasn't going to let federal officers come in, and basically she started the sanctuary cities. How can you basically in America have people who are coming here illegally and commit crimes, and cities say we're not going to let federal officials come in and take them out?
And why is the law that you're breaking of coming over across the border illegally? Why is that the one law that we're protecting?
Well,
how about, I don't know, armed robbery?
Well, I'll tell you why.
I'll
tell you why. Because it's treated civilly, Eric, and that's the thing. And so if you come over here, it's, and maybe that's a different issue that needs to be legislated. But right now, it's only a civil offense, and it's not considered criminal. But during an energy address today in Washington, President Trump pivoted to tout his support for both of these pieces of legislation and Homeland Security's work cracking down on violent, undocumented immigrants.
The vicious and disgusting and horrible MS-13 gang members, and we're getting them out. We are getting them out. They're going fast. General Kelly and his whole group, they've gotten rid of 6,000 so far. We're about 50% there, and we're actually liberating towns.
Kmele, coming to you on this one, obviously the sanctuary cities thing, different jurisdictions want to treat this differently. So your position on their right to do that?
Well, certainly, I mean, there are some constitutional issues here, to be sure. The Supreme Court has talked about the right of states to be able to pursue their own policies, to not have the federal government effectively take punitive actions against them by withholding things in order to force them to do something. I'd say that this is a pretty important issue, but again, I return to the central issue here. If our concern is violent crime, if our concern is places like Chicago, like Baltimore, that have dealt with huge surges in crime, shouldn't we be looking at the things that are actually driving that trend? For example, the war on drugs, which is something that Attorney General Sessions is doubling down on.
Why can't we do both?
I was going to say, it doesn't have to be isolated.
Well, let's talk about how often the president. Let's talk about how often the president has talked about criminal justice reform. Let's talk about how often the president has actually talked about
Kmele, you can
meaningful improvements in the way that we're prosecuting the drug war.
You can't say it's criminal justice reform or
Theoretically,
immigration.
no.
He hasn't talked about
no,
these
but in the
things.
Trump administration,
But he didn't run on criminal justice reform, right?
Okay, so we wouldn't, if you're looking at drug gang violence, a way better way of dealing with that would be ending the drug war. It really is that simple. If you look at alcohol,
First of all,
which is something,
it's not simple to end the drug war.
which is something that, you know, it is makes people angry, violent, it's fatal, it can kill people. There's a reason why there's not like Maker's Mark versus Jack Daniels knife fights in the streets. It's because there's not this underground market for it. And the jail system, people
wait, I should have an
go
update.
in and out, in and out, in and out. It's not a deterrent.
We have an update. They are now voting on the sanctuary cities piece of legislation. As we speak, when we have that number, we will bring it to you. Kat, I hear you, and I hear the impassion in your voice, but the issue is it's not an either or. We know that, right? And so when we talk about just from a purely criminal, punitive standpoint, if you break the law, particularly in a violent way that results in a felony, why on earth would we have anything other than a very aggressive penalty for that when you come back over here? I can't understand.
I don't have a problem with Kate's law. I don't think it's a bad law. I certainly don't feel any sympathy for the people who commit these crimes. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I think that we should focus on big picture solutions that will actually solve the problem.
At the exclusion of this issue, though?
I'm saying I don't.
That's like saying we're not going to enforce armed robbery because we're going to focus on murder and rape. Guess what? Enforce all of them.
Yeah, I think that's a false equivalence that you're drawing there.
How
the fact
is that? How is that?
Here's the fundamental reason that's the case, because Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General of the United States, has actually been doubling down on the drug war. He has actually been instituting policies.
You guys are talking about a whole separate policy.
You can't say I'm wrong and then say, oh, by the way, Sessions is wrong.
No, actually, I'm giving you the reason why this is.
I'm
going to blow your mind. I agree with you on criminal justice reform.
I do too.
Okay?
Great.
But I also think Kate's law, as a mandatory must pass, unequivocally has to go through to keep the country safer.
I understand the argument you're making. My argument, just to be clear, is that in a narrow sense, this particular law is not going to have a dramatic impact on crime.
In your opinion,
there are things that the president could do.
Opinion,
I have seen zero analysis of this that suggests there is a wave of immigrant-driven violent crime.
I don't think anybody's talking about a wave, though. I think we're talking about instances necessarily. I think we're talking about instances where we know for fact, right, Camille?
Sure.
People have been raped, murdered, killed. That happens at the hands of people that are not here legally. We know that, right?
Sure.
So if there's something we can do legislatively that will make that less likely, shouldn't we do it?
One wonders if this law will accomplish that.
I don't wonder it. I know that. I know that.
The reality is, you talk about Sessions. We're taking these gangs off the streets, including Long Island and everything else here. These are vicious, vicious gangs. Now, do you think they're going to stay on the other side of the border? The moment they get a chance, they'll be back here again. And we need to basically have more than just civil things to take care of these people. And every law enforcement person in the world wants this. And I've been around the game a long, long time because I'm an old man here. We've been fighting the drug war since the Reagan days. It's a very complicated thing. And certainly it's an underlying part of all of this. But you got to take them step by step, and these two bills are very important.
I just don't think you can say because we need criminal justice reform, we shouldn't have Kate's law. That's a false. You want to talk about a false equivalent?
I never said that.
Have
yeah,
it.
that's.
When did I say that?
I don't think that's the argument I'm making. If perhaps I'm not being clear, the narrow argument is we aren't actually talking about those other important reforms. The president has been beating this drum relentlessly while pursuing other policies that are actually making the drug war worse.
Do you think Kate's law has merit and should pass?
I think the legislation could have merit if, in fact, it were clear that this was a unique problem that needed to be addressed. I'm not sure that there are many violent offenders that are being...
Is there a quota, though, that we have to get
Nobody
to?
is people dying.
We actually have recidivism rates in this country that are quite high as well. Would you suggest that we should pass a federal law that extends the prison stay of every violent offender by 5 years in order to try to preemptively prevent crime?
I don't believe in preemptively.
I don't think that makes a great deal of sense.
Not at all. But what
that's
I'm
precisely
saying,
what this law is suggesting.
No, I would say no. It's once you because I've seen it, right? I've seen it. Once you commit a violent crime in this country, there's and I know this because I've had to counsel my clients. Listen, we take this plea deal, right?
Sure.
One of the consequences is going to be it's going to adversely affect your immigration status, and they understand and say, Ms. Williams, I get it. I'm willing to plead guilty. So we move forward along that. You don't then get to say, never mind. I want to come back to the United States, and whatever happens, happens. I don't think that is the advantage of anybody here. And I agree with you, by the way, both of you on criminal justice reform. Politically speaking, though, that's not what this president ran off of. So I wouldn't really expect
it's just not one or the other. I would agree with you that if you had criminal justice reform, you might be more effective in implementing laws like Kate's law.
A quick update. It appears that this has passed. That's what we're hearing at this point.
So this is the first one.
This is the first one.
This is not
Case. This is sanctuary cities. Yes.
That was the tougher hurdle of this.
I would agree.
Eric, I'm not saying theoretically that you can't have both. I don't think Kmele is saying that either. What I'm saying, what I think Kmele is also saying, is that in this administration, it's very clear that that's not going to be the approach.
That's not the agenda of this administration.
That's true. That's not even the agenda of this segment. All you know is that was to discuss the merits of Kate's law and sanctuary city, and you're bringing in an attack on the Trump dealing with.
I'm using my critical thinking skills to provide alternate solutions.
You're mixing the. I mean, this is about.
But why does it have to be an alternate solution?
Well, I think ostensibly this is supposed to be about reducing violent crime, and that's the reason I introduced this, because I think this could be much more dramatic.
Maybe that's what we're having here is a difference of way we're seeing. I'm not seeing this as a solution for reducing violent crime. I'm seeing it as a clear follow-through step that says when you commit a violent felony in this country, you don't get to come back. It's very simple.
Equally as important, you have to get away from the civil. If you're going to put people out of the country because they've been here illegally and they keep coming back, you have to move it from civil to a criminal. You're just not going to be able to, you're never going to stop the illegals coming across the border. And I think the bottom line, if you're going to have the whole comprehensive and going to Trump, this law was put in existence before Trump started running. He picked this ball up and talked about it as a candidate, and he wants to implement it. But there's a lot of other things in criminal justice he's going to do in the 4 years or 8 years that he's there.
Well, certainly we hope that we will see that too. So we'll keep you posted, certainly, on Kate's Law. That should be coming up soon. But first, President Trump's partially restored travel ban coming into effect tonight, with the administration issuing a slate of new rules. How will they impact America's safety and security? We'll find out. Stay with us.
Quick update. The House bill on defunding sanctuary cities has officially passed. We're now awaiting a vote on Kate's Law, and we'll give you the results when it happens. Meanwhile, at 8 p.m. Eastern tonight, President Trump's partially restored travel ban goes into effect, impacting 6 terror-plagued countries in the Muslim world. The administration issuing guidelines for new visa applicants in accordance with the Supreme Court's ruling this week. Applicants from the 6 countries must prove a relationship with a parent, spouse, child, adult son or daughter, son-in-law, daughter-in-law, or sibling currently in the U.S. to be eligible. Similar rules would apply to refugee applicants from all nations.
I don't like that. Here's the problem. When you use language, which the Supreme Court did here, the bona fide relationship, and they don't really define it because that's not really a legal term, you leave out things. So that was an extensive list you read there, Kat, but it doesn't have grandmas on there. It doesn't have,
second cousin.
I would say
third cousins once removed. But, so it's not really complete.
My best friend's brother.
I have a bona fide relationship with the guy at the deli that I order my egg and cheese from. He's seen me at my worst. He's seen me in ways that no one else ever has,
He'll take you back to his country.
Yeah, well.
The reality here is that court decision was very important. It's a temporary decision. The real decision will come in October. There'll be a full hearing on it. But the most important thing, and most of you probably don't know this, there's 670 district judges. There's almost 900 federal judges of all kinds. What the court has said is the president has more power on this matter than any federal judge does. Since 1960, since John F. Kennedy's been over 40 things like this, all based on the same premise. So the reality is this is a temporary ban for some of these people. It'll all be idealized, but the bottom line is the president now has the authority to do this.
The other reality is that the Supreme Court found that this portion of the temporary travel ban was constitutional against the 9th Circuit and the 4th Circuit, pointing out what Ed was talking about. But also there was a unanimous 9-0 decision, and the only dissenters, now we were talking about it when it came down, there were a couple of dissenters, and they were conservative judges, and the only dissent they had was it wasn't a full allowing of the travel ban to go through.
Right.
So it was very carefully written by Roberts to get all 9 on them. It was very important to get all 9 on them at this point in time.
Yeah, because it shows it's not political, right? This is actually one of those very rare things in today's society that's not partisan. Well, it's actually constitutional.
Yeah, I would say that I'm generally skeptical of the efficacy of the travel ban, but certainly agree that the president has the authority to do this. This is, as you stated, Ed, this is very typical and conventional in the sense that the president has had discretion about decisions like this. The reason I'm concerned about it is because, again, ostensibly, this is supposed to be about keeping Americans safe. I am not certain that it will do that. I am concerned that this is, like the TSA, a bit of security.
It doesn't have to. It just needs to be constitutional. That's what it needs to be. And you guys I would think.
I agree that it's constitutional.
That's true.
Absolutely. I agree that it's constitutional. I've always said that anybody who thinks that this is in earnest a Muslim ban, I mean, it would be a very bad one. It would be really letting in a lot of Muslims as a Muslim ban. However, I agree with Kmele. If you look in the past, would this have prevented anyone from dying? It wouldn't have. We don't know about the future, but I don't feel safer about it. I think it is, just like you said, the TSA security theater.
But the problem is you don't have, in these countries, you don't have the process. We don't have the manpower in the system to basically do the processing, and that has to be fixed.
Well, we just jump in here, guys.
They're voting on case law right now. Yeah,
case law is being voted on right now, and it says there's only about 3 minutes left. So we're gonna give you the final answer in this block. We're not going to.
To your point, though, Eric, it's around intention. So I actually tend to agree with Kat and Kmele on this. I don't really trust that this travel ban legitimately actually makes us safer, but that's not the test. The constitutional test is if it's intended, if it's designed to keep us safer, and it's intended to have national security benefits, which I think this ban does.
I think it's largely intended also to fulfill a campaign problem. He wants to be the tough on terror guy. And this certainly makes it look like that.
I don't think that's a bad thing, though.
Right. It looked like that. And I wasn't making a judgment call. I wasn't making a judgment call on that. I'm just saying that's what I think that this is more about.
But we don't know that either. I mean, let me be Pollyannic. Maybe it does make us safer, right? Maybe it does. Maybe they take the 90 days and say, wow, there's a loophole here that we didn't even realize that's been here. And guess what? We're going to close that loophole and we keep one terrorist out. And listen, I'm for going over bounds on being more safe and more secure.
Being safer rather than being
I don't mind taking my shoes off
It appears that the House has enough votes to pass Kate's law just coming in. So go to that. It appears
the two big initiatives that we were looking at, sanctuary city law passed first, and now Kate's law passes the House. And as Ed points out, there's a little bit more of a hurdle in the Senate, which I didn't even realize they need the 60-vote threshold in the Senate.
It's not reconciliation. They have to put it through in a legitimate way.
And again, I don't know Kate's law in terms of what the problems with it would be, because I mean, I don't have a problem with it.
I think it's resistance. I think the problem is going to be some
because it was Trump.
Senators. Senators. They feel they must resist at all costs.
This was last year.
Right, of course. But as soon as he attaches his face to something, some people are just going to get mad because they're petty. All right. A big sweetener is added to the Senate's health care bill to get more Republicans on board. But is it enough to reach a new deal before tomorrow's deadline? Stay tuned.
All right, you're looking at the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives, where Congressman just passed two laws, two big initiatives that the Trump administration was pushing for. The sanctuary city law passed first. A couple minutes later, Kate's law passed, so that's in the books, and they will now head over to the Senate, where my good friend Ed Rollins tells me it needs a 60-vote threshold to pass to make it into law. All right, Republican leaders in the Senate launching a full-court press to secure a new health care deal by tomorrow. And today they announced a big incentive to get more Republicans on board, promising $45 billion in spending to help fight opioid abuse. It's intended to try and win support from Senators Rob Portman of Ohio and Shelley Capito of West Virginia. Both states, as you know, are being ravaged by the opioid abuse epidemic. The White House reacting to this proposal this afternoon.
I can tell you the president has obviously made fighting the opioid crisis a priority for him, and I would imagine he would be supportive of pushing resources towards that.
But can this help Senate leaders lock up a new deal by tomorrow's deadline? Let's go to the man who's been around politics for a heck of a long time. Ed, they're a long way away. Maybe even 15 or 20.
They could. The bottom line is there's at least 10 that have been publicly saying they're not for it at this point in time. Even on this particular provision, the good senator from West Virginia has not basically made a determination. She wanted this, but she hasn't said yes. I'm now to a yes. So my sense is they got a lot of swapping back and forth to go. I don't think they can make the deadline. The bill would not pass today, and this bill certainly would not pass in the Senate. So they got a lot of work. They're probably better to go home, try and fix it when they come back.
You know what bothers me? They offer $45 billion to, in essence, buy two senators' votes.
Yeah, and it's a Band-Aid approach, Eric. Who are we kidding? This $45 billion price tag is not going to remedy this devastating problem, number one. And absolutely, Ed's right. There's no way they make this deadline by tomorrow. It's too little and it's far too late.
Rand Paul this morning he said he met with President Trump, I believe, yesterday. I think he met with Vice President Pence today, and he offered an idea: split the health care bill into two. One that favors the conservative wing of the Republican Party, one that favors the more moderate wing.
I guess we could do that. I don't know, though. Throwing all this money at opiate addiction should solve the problem from everything we've seen in the past. It will work perfectly. No, this is a mess, okay? They're going to do that. They can do that by tomorrow. I mean, this whole thing has been a political disaster for Republicans. Everybody has to admit that. And how are you going to get the super conservative people and the moderates, the super liberal people to agree on anything? I don't see how it's going to be possible.
Kmele, I saw a poll today, I believe it was, maybe last night it came out, and if I'm not mistaken, somewhere under 20% of the American public. 17% of the American population
not quite
thinks
20.
this is a good idea.
Yeah, no, this is deeply problematic. The merits of the legislation have not improved at all, and the real question here is, why are we rushing to try and transform an industry overnight with a poorly thought out piece of legislation? Haven't we seen this before?
Right.
It doesn't work out well.
Right. Well, the Democrats, this is why Republicans got elected, because Democrats blew it so bad with Obamacare. And now we're making all the same mistakes on the Republican side.
Absolutely.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Well,
like they said, they're digging a hole, Ed.
Right.
Let
The mistake they made is they wanted to get the tax money out of this particular provision to basically do their tax reform. You know, obviously, if I was running the show, which I wasn't, I would have done tax reform early on and infrastructure. But at the end of the day, this is where we are. I don't think it's going to go. I think piecemeal. We've criticized the Democrats for the way they did last time, swapping things off, buying votes. I just don't think it's going to work at this point.
Agreed. Hitching one wagon to the other legislatively is a disaster.
And splitting means you'll have two failed bills.
All right. You think so?
Yeah.
Hope so.
Ed Rollins. Hope so. All right. New military options being prepared for President Trump to deal with North Korea. What it means for the nuclear crisis with the rogue state right after this.
Scar tissue that I wish you saw. Sarcastic Mr. Know-It-All. I'll close your eyes and I'll kiss you, 'cause with the birds I'll share. With the birds I'll share.
Welcome back to the Fox News Specialists. Our specialists today are Ed Rollins and Kmele Foster. Let's continue the conversation. President Trump is being given a fresh set of military options to confront North Korea over its nuclear and ballistic missile programs. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster is starkly laying out the urgency of the problem.
The threat is much more immediate now. And so it's clear that we can't repeat the same approach, failed approach of the past. So the president has directed us to not do that and to prepare a range of options, including a military option, which nobody wants to take, right?
And this afternoon, U.S. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin announced new sanctions targeting North Korea, including the blacklisting of a Chinese bank, believed to have illicit ties to the rogue state. In the next hour, President Trump and the First Lady will meet with South Korea's new president at the White House. Eric?
This very good start, right? And we talked about China getting involved and exerting some pressure on the crazy wacko dictator in North Korea. But so what do we have? One bank and two individuals so far? I mean, you got to really, really get deep into it. And China's got to get a little bit more aggressive. So here's part of the other problem. They're meeting with South Korean president. Now, Ed, he's not being very helpful lately, is he?
He's not as pro-American as most of them have been. I did a presidential campaign in South Korea many, many years ago. And the problem is there are no options. There are no good options. This goes back to 1952. Every president has looked at this. They have been a force. And the problem is Seoul is so close. And if you ever start an activity in North Korea, we have certainly the weapons that can take them out in a heartbeat, but they can kill 20 million people in a very short period of time. Seoul and the surrounding areas of Seoul are 15, 20 miles from the borders, and they could just do it, not with nuclear, but just with, and it's a very heavy, probably the most catastrophic war would have in modern times is right there.
Now, Eric, you've talked a lot about increasing the pressure around China and the sanctions and the financial component, particularly if we want to avoid the military option. I was happy to see Steve Mnuchin walk up and speak, disappointed with what he had to say. It felt, and I understand and respect we have to start somewhere with the economic sanctions and everything, but it just felt far too thin for me to have any real impact on what this is really going to take and really going to look like. Much more aggressive.
I think President Obama put more sanctions on Russia when he left office over something far less dangerous, in my opinion, than a crazy dictator.
But you have to remember, these people have been starving for a long time.
Our sanctions really don't mean much.
They'll brush them off and just keep moving forward. The Chinese are the key, and they basically don't want to play there. So that's the reality of it right now. That's why we're having these discussions.
I mean, certainly the conversations about trying to find a bold new approach here, I just don't know that there is one. There is a status quo, and the status quo exists precisely because of the carnage that would ensue if there were ever any sort of military option pursued. I do wonder, though, and perhaps, Ed, you have some insight on this, if what we're seeing from South Korea is sort of less hostility to the United States in particular, and more specifically, a genuine concern that this administration might be more willing to look at the military option. I think the president has at least tried to posture in that way. I have no reason to believe that he is actually interested in picking that particular military.
I think you're absolutely right. I think the bottom line here is you have a new president who would like to have some kind of a merger with the North or better relationships with the North, and it's just not going to
Explain to me, Ed, or Kmele, if you guys have an opinion or an idea, why South Korea would turn away our missile defense system.
Because the Chinese, I understand that the Chinese are not happy about it, and obviously they still got to play with that same sandbox.
There's something about the status quo that's I think it brings people comfort, Eric. I don't know, but that's what the facts and the history tell me.
Here's why it can't be status quo. When President Obama was first elected, 2009, the biggest nuclear bomb that they tested was 2 megatons. Megatons. That when President Obama left office, the last one prior to him leaving was 10 megatons. That's not status quo. That's deadlier and deadlier.
You know I believe in you, Eric, and I agree with you, rather. And I believe in you. And I do believe in you. Go the swamp. But also, I am not comfortable waiting for the worst case scenario to happen. But I just can't see people getting on board with what it would take, the carnage you're talking about, the unintended consequences, perhaps, that would ensue if indeed we got in front of this thing.
I think what they're doing, there's a lot of options that are there today besides weapons, and that's the cyber stuff and what have you.
Sure.
And we could create a lot of chaos.
Yeah, and working on building up our missile defense system so there would never be a failed test like there was last week, which is horrifying.
But we have to put them somewhere.
Here's the thing about making sure they work. When you talk about going and doing a strike against them, like I know you were upset about auto warm beer, Eric. You're really upset and you wanted to get in there, but that would be so many dead people.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know that.
Yes, we do.
I think we pretty well
know
do.
that. I mean, I'll go back to the Israelis and the Iraqis in 1980-81, where they surgically took out some of their nuclear proliferation capabilities without many casualties at all. And guess what the Iraqis did not do? They didn't attack Israel. They didn't kill any people, and they didn't attack the
This
United
is something
States.
like nothing we've never seen before. We have South Korea right there, Japan right there. We have exactly.
But all the while, it's getting worse.
They don't want the missile defense system. Maybe they don't want our 35,000 troops.
The truth of the matter is, we could put one Ohio submarine there and blow up the entire country, but we have 35,000 men and women on that border, and it's a tripwire.
Start moving them out and see how fast the South Korean president says.
All right. Directly ahead, President Trump unleashing a pretty unbelievable attack on Twitter against 2 MSNBC hosts, and it's sparking an absolute firestorm. We'll be right back.
I didn't know that I was starving till I tasted you. Don't need no butterflies when you give me the whole damn zoo. By the way, you do things to my body. I didn't know.
Wow, are we out of time already? We can't even do this block? That's amazing.
Eric,
just kidding.
Not getting off
President Trump going all in against his media critics today, taking on MSNBC hosts Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. The president tweeting, quote, "I heard poorly rated Morning Joe speaks badly of me. Don't watch anymore." Then, how come low IQ Crazy Mika, along with Psycho Joe, came to Mar-a-Lago 3 nights in a row around New Year's Eve and insisted on joining me? She was bleeding badly from a facelift. I said no. The tweet sparked a fierce backlash from the left and even some fellow Republicans, but the White House isn't backing down amid the uproar.
The president has been attacked mercilessly on personal accounts by members on that program. And I think he's been very clear that when he gets attacked, he's going to hit back. I think the American people elected somebody who's tough, who's smart, and who's a fighter. And that's Donald Trump. And I don't think that it's a surprise to anybody that he fights fire with fire.
Thank you, producers, for giving me this segment. As you know, I'm a very close friend of Mr. Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, and also of Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski. I went to their concert. So here's how, just give me 2 seconds.
I heard that this is going to build.
This will be the last I say.
Build your character, Eric.
Yeah. It's like 2 of your friends fighting. You just want them to stop fighting, and you can't figure out how, so you come up with a solution. I came up with a solution to solve this Donald Trump, Joe Scarborough, Mika Brzezinski issue. Now we know Mika and Joe are going to get married. They've announced their engagement. And you know a president can oversee a marriage. I suggest I will broker this deal for you. Joe and Mika, have Donald Trump marry you two.
I don't think
everyone will go off on their happy way.
I don't think that's going to work.
Eric, let me tell you something.
Yes.
From a woman's perspective, right? And I appreciate the deputy press secretary there talking about President Trump being a fighter and people wanting a tough fighter. There's not a lot that's tough about calling out somebody about their facelift, and once you do it, pretty sure that there's not a lot of turning back.
Yeah,
so even if I can see Joe forgiving this,
but maybe he
Mika,
meant Joe when he was talking about the facelift.
No, and also, whatever, Eric. Oh, my God. Eric, please. Eric, don't say that because you don't think that. Please.
Maybe it was kidding.
No,
He's
okay.
in a good
Maybe
mood
he
this
was,
morning.
but
I'm
he's
like,
not
you know,
a fighter. He's not a fighter. It makes you like an internet troll. And also, facelift, like whatever. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't, but like who cares? When I get older, I'm going to have so many facelifts. I'm going to get all the plastic surgery in the world, and I feel very blessed that I will have hopefully enough money to do so and just have my face looking dope for as long as I can possibly have it. I mean, that shouldn't be an insult.
Can I give you good news? By the time you need one, and hopefully me too, it's going to be so much less invasive. You won't be bleeding.
But you know, no, it's horrible. There's nothing good that comes from attacking a woman's appearance as a president. Come on, Eric.
You always want Trump not to do these things. It's a distraction. But he's been doing it forever, and he's not going to change. As I say to people all the time, 70-year-old men don't change. I'm 74, so I know well. Sometimes you have to defend the indefensible, and that's what happens in the White House. If he does for their show tomorrow what he did for you in your book, which is now #1 because the president tweeted back what a great book it was, they'll be beating 60 Minutes next week. Now, I don't think that's going to happen, just like I don't think he's going to marry them. But I think the reality is this is a distraction. He needs to get back on message. He's got big things he needs to move forward. But you're going to have to live with it. It's going to be every single day. This is going to happen.
I'm going to stay optimistic. I'm going to say they should bury the hatchet and just get back together and hang out and go back to Mar-a-Lago and let Donald Trump marry them at Mar-a-Lago.
Well, the problem was when
doubling down.
Unlikely. I'll say this, right? Clearly, he's engaging in ad hominem. You're picking a nasty fight. It feels sort of like Drake versus Meek Mill. This is unnecessary and ought not happen. There are important, meaningful things that are worth criticizing the president about. I don't know that progressives who are angry at the president ought to latch on to this. They might, for example, talk about civilian casualty counts from military engagements.
Let me bring this over to Eboni. Did you notice, or either one of you, on the right, we had Jeb Bush, we had Paul Ryan, we had Ben Sass, and we had Lindsey Graham. 4 squishy anti-Trump rhinos attacking the president today.
Those guys. No, you know, I was going to say, Camille, you're talking about the progressive latching on. It was actually a lot of GOPers coming out attacking for this. And to Ed's point, I was all prepared today to make an argument in defense of President Trump about, look, this has been a great Trump versus the media week for Donald Trump. You've had 3 CNN journalists having to resign. You've got the New York Times looking a hot mess with the lawsuit with Sarah Palin. This is great. And then he sends out this tweet. So I really can't make heads or tails.
The only lesson that I say, and I'm not being defensive, you get in a fight with Donald Trump, you better be prepared for the bazooka. You can come at him with a knife, and he's going to shoot back with you with a bazooka. In this particular case, he not only knocked their teeth out and dumped them in the ditch alongside, way over. He poured gasoline on him, going to set him on fire.
Now, a lot of it on himself, unfortunately.
I was just going to say, I don't think this helps him at all. Normally, when you go into a fight, you don't try to destroy yourself.
Well, and to your point, it distracted from some really good positive news for Donald Trump.
He could be taking credit today for this very important legislation that's passed. That's what we should be discussing tonight, how important that is.
So don't be anti-facelifts. This is America.
We're going to leave it right there. By the way, just before we go, I went to Philadelphia last night, and that crowd absolutely adores this show, and they love Fox. They love Fox. They said, you're back, and you're back better than ever, Fox. All right. A reminder, check out my new book, The Swamp Washington's Murky Pool of Corruption and Cronyism, and how Trump can drain it. It's already a big seller on Amazon. And last night, I had to Pennsylvania for a signing and a discussion about the book, sponsored by 1210 WPHT Radio Philadelphia, and was fortunate to have an amazing turnout. My sincere thanks to everyone who came and their support for the book. And when we return, we're going to circle back with these 2 specialists, Ed Rollins and Kmele Foster.
All right, it's that time to circle back with our specialists. Our specialists today, Ed Rollins and Kmele Foster. So a very quick update. The House's passage of Kate's Law, President Trump tweeting about it just a few moments ago, saying, quote, good news, House just passed hashtag Kate's Law. Hopefully Senate will follow. So, Ed, that tweet, do you think that's going to quiet all of the, because most of social media today has, of course, been talking about the
the good thing about social media is it goes quickly. The old advice I used to give clients and candidates, don't think out loud. In Donald Trump's case, I'd say don't tweet alone.
Okay, fair enough.
Ed, can I follow up on you with a question to you? You've been around, you've seen a lot of politicians. Is Trump a politician?
He's an entertainer, he's a strong leader, and I think over time people are going to get used to all the tweets and all the rest of it, and they're going to measure him on how strong he is and where he puts this country.
Kmele, what about you? What do you think? Trump, good day, bad day?
I mean, good day for him, perhaps, but that is a weird standard. I mean, he's had so many strange and bizarre days, so many self-induced controversies and tragedies that he's had to deal with. I just want good policy. I want good outcomes for the country, and I want to talk about policies that make sense. So maybe one day I'll sit down with him. Ed, could you connect us, maybe? I don't know.
You give him good advice?
Sure, of course. Are you kidding? It's me.
Absolutely, of course.
All right, love it. This is what it looks like, gentlemen. Thank you to our Fox News specialists today, Ed Rollins and Kmele Foster, and thank you all for watching. Make sure you follow us on social media at Specialist FNC on both Twitter and Facebook. And remember, 5 o'clock, well, it'll never be the same. Special reports up next.
President Trump goes to war with cable news yet again, and one of his big weapons in the war on terror takes effect tonight. This is Special Report.